So, greetings to Rio de Janeiro and to all the people attending this Earth Day 2025 event. I wish you all the best. And Earth Day is an important part of the calendar year. And it needs to be important too, because we need to mobilize society and people all around the world to take action on climate change and on the environment. So congratulations on that. I don't have to tell you in Rio de Janeiro that COP30 is coming, the UN Climate Conference in Brazil. So the eyes of the world are on Brazil this year. And these UN climate conferences, these COPs, they have a bit of a rhythm. And sometimes there are big COPs. And I think everybody in the world believes that this COP in Brazil, in Belém, is going to be very, very important. Important because obviously the political landscape has gone through a seismic shift with the new administration back in the White House, Donald Trump, who has again decided to pull the United States out of the Paris Agreement. We have to remember the United States has always been a little schizophrenic about climate change action. You know, the original treaty signed in Rio, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992 was signed up to by President Bush, and then his son later on pulled the US out of the Kyoto Protocol, which was that first emissions reduction treaty just for industrialized nations. And then we've had other moments, of course, where the United States has been very strong and positive on climate action. And now we're back again with President Trump, who somehow thinks that it's not a big deal. We need to show in Belém, in COP30 later in the year, that climate change is a big deal. We really need to do something about it. And if we do, there are huge opportunities for all our economies and for our people and for jobs. It's a positive investment in the present and the future. It's not a cost to society. The cost will come if we don't act. So we are a strong world. We are strong nations. Brazil is strong politically, very adept at handling this. And I think we really believe some big changes can be made. One issue, of course, in COP is going to be finance. That's absolutely always a big issue at COPs. And it was always my understanding as the spokesperson of the Paris Agreement and being involved in this subject for a very long time, that this wasn't about printing loads of new money. This was about aligning the financial system so that it prices in both the risks of climate change, but also the benefits can flow from actually acting on it. So I think we need to be very sensible about how we deal with this financial issue and not turn it into a political football and a political fight as it so often is. The other big issue at Belém is that we only have 5 years to actually halve greenhouse gas emissions. That is what the science tells us. And this science, again, has been built painstakingly over many, many years by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and all the scientists chosen by their governments to be part of this work. So how do we get anywhere near halving our emissions by 2030 to give the world a 50-50 chance of hitting net zero by 2050, the safety limits intact and a world still functioning for future generations? I was in Brasilia just recently with my colleague Victor Ramos. We were making a TV show with the United Nations Environment Programme's Climate and Clean Air Coalition. And they're dealing with these so-called super pollutants or short-lived climate pollutants. We're talking about things like methane that come out of leaks from the oil and gas industry or out of waste tips. We're talking about methane also coming from agricultural systems, including livestock. Then there are the fluorinated gases in the refrigeration systems. And then there are things like black carbon or soot, which are really bad for human health, as being really also bad for the climate and for, other systems like agriculture. So it's absolutely clear, again, from the science, which is our North Star and our South Star about what we do as a global community and as nations, that if we can somehow quickly manage down these short-lived climate pollutants, and that's the key word, they're superheaters of the atmosphere, but something like methane only hangs around for 12 years. If we can get them out of the system very rapidly, perhaps we can actually get near to halving greenhouse gases by 2030. We have effectively an emergency brake, which we can actually pull right now to actually get us on track for the bigger decarbonization that has to happen worldwide. So I think there should be a lot of attention on the super pollutants. And Brazil, by the way, has just taken up the co-chairmanship of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, along with the United Kingdom. So I think there's every chance there will be major movements here. Science has never been under so much attack in the modern era. It's not just misinformation coming out of the United States, perhaps led by some of their oil and gas industry, which has been captured by the new Trump administration. It's not just misinformation that slows down the transition that we all need. And it's not just then the other position that some of those who have been against climate action have done, which was to sort of accept the science, sort of accept climate change which is happening, but kind of play down the consequences of inaction. No, they've moved to a whole cancel science culture. I will be, along with my colleagues at We Don't Have Time TV, broadcasting from a conference called Change Now 2025 in Paris. It's going to mark the anniversary of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, but other things too. And we are going to launch an initiative called Make Science Great Again. Now, we are deliberately borrowing the kind of rhetoric that the Trump administration uses to actually not do anything, but to actually do sort of, damaging things. But we want to take back this rhetoric and rally the world around the fact that without science, we enter another dark age. We must maintain science and the credibility of science as our guiding light for what we do. So I'd like to ask you there in Rio de Janeiro, wonderful Rio de Janeiro, to actually join with us in this campaign, Make Science Great Again, along with many, many others, many scientists who will be joining this as well as interesting people like Bertrand Piccard. If you remember Bertrand Piccard, he flew around the world in a solar plane called Solar Impulse. He's also backing this because science leads to new ideas to deal with the climate crisis, like the super pollutants, so new policies and new actions, but it also is the route or the pathway for increasing numbers of new technologies which can help us deal with the climate change crisis. So let's make science great again as well, and let's make sure that we all support the Brazilian presidency and its leadership in this moment of political vacuum from the United States and the other countries, India, China, the European Union, Latin America as a whole. So many interesting things going on in terms of climate action. Let's get behind everybody. Let's make science great again. And let's make sure that COPs are great again so that we have another Paris moment, but this time in the Amazon. Thank you very much.